I'm Pete White, and I'm locked in.
I'm Stephen Mowry, and I'm locked in.
I'm Jordan Griffin, and I'm locked in.
Hey everybody, this is Island Fight CEO Dean Toole, and I am locked in.
I'm Michael Davis, and I'm locked in.
This is John Fitch, and I am locked in.
And we are locked in. Myself, Max Van Auken, Dave the Wave, David Van Auken, my cousin. How are you doing?
Cousin, I'm doing great tonight, man. How are you guys doing?
Doing splendid. This is a Fight Bananas podcast. Well, it's a locked in podcast, but it's on fightbananas.com. In case this is your first time listening, fightbananas.com is the best MMA website out there. Dave and I have been writing some articles, obviously uploading some podcasts from the Locked In podcast, which is available on any podcast platform. That's iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Locked In with 2 N's. We cover every sport. But these MMA episodes, all MMA, boxing, you name it, local combat sports, fightbananas.com.
Yeah, because I'm really digging these episodes, and I'm also really digging fightbananas.com. I love that we put out not just like news, and sometimes we do, like, wow, Woodley versus Usman, that's going down, welterweight title, let's talk about it. But you and I both, we talk about future things that could happen in the MMA game. We talk about who's the best, what weight class, who's the best champ ever. Just really good topics. Just sit down, relax, read for 4 minutes, go to fightbananas.com. I give it 2 thumbs up.
Awesome. I do want to start off today's show, though, I just got a book from John Fitch. For those of you that don't know, UFC great, competed against the best, George St. Pierre, you name it, now Bellator competing for the title. Just got a book from him, and he had a very nice message in it, and just kind of went back and forth with him, and it's Failing Upward, Death by Ego. So make sure you guys check out his book, John Fitch, Failing Upward, Death by Ego, Book 1. So make sure you guys go check it out, and congratulations to John Fitch. And we also have some other big news, Dave. We're involved with Island Fights. We call the fights there. We do some podcasts up there. And Island Fights 52, February 7th. It falls on a Wednesday, 2019, Pensacola. That's a stacked card. You got Brock Weaver and James Freeman, Chase Sherman and Jeremy May, UFC Fight Pass. The tickets and event info, you can call 850-454-6215. How excited are you for Island Fights 52?
Hugely excited for Island Fights 52. But let me go back a little bit to John Fitch, one of the greatest welterweight fighters of all time in the history of MMA. And I said this to him probably the second time he was on the show, Max. John Fitch will become the only fighter ever to be a UFC Hall of Famer and a Bellator Hall of Famer. I really think it's going to happen. I kind of called my shot. I Babe Ruthed it. And if he beats Roy McDonald, or should I say when he beats Roy McDonald and gets that welterweight championship in that Grand Prix, the tournament, Bellator Hall of Fame, he should go.
That's a good call.
Okay. Oh. Yeah, buddy?
No, I was just saying it's a good call.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, Island Fights 52. The last 2 events have been outstanding. Island Fights 50, Island Fights 51, Michael Beast Boy Davis in the main event. We had Hannah Goldie in the main event of Island Fights 50. It's the absolute best fighters that are not signed by UFC yet, right on the edge. There's multiple fighters that I think should be in the UFC. Mike Davis, Brock Weaver should be in the UFC. Chase Sherman will be back in the UFC. There's just so many names. Hannah Goldie's going to be in the UFC. Bellator, PFL, she will be a future breakout superstar in the female MMA scene. We just had Megan Cawley on the show a couple days ago. There's just so much talent in Island Fights, and it's all Dean Toole, the matchmaker, the man himself. One of the best in the business, Max, of matching great fights. It's a talent. It really is. You can put a card together. You can sell tickets. But at the end of the day, if people are not entertained about what's going on inside that octagon, or for Island Fights inside that ring, no one will come back. But, we've been there. The shows are packed. The tables are packed. There's people hanging from the rafters for Island Fights. Dean Toole does a tremendous job.
Yes, he does. So let's get into some MMA news around the game, primarily UFC. We have so much going on there. Let's just start off, kind of bounce off here. One of the first of many fights coming up, or rumored, is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Anthony Pettis. This is Anthony Pettis moving up to the welterweight division. That would take place March 23rd. I'll let you take the floor on this one. What is your initial reaction when you hear these two competing?
For one, fireworks, fight of the night. I can't wait. All those wrapped into one. I'm excited. Just as a fight fan, you and I, first and foremost, are MMA fans. We're fight fans. And just the stand-up skill and technique we're going to see in that fight might be unmatched throughout the first spring, out the first half of the 2019 year. So I cannot wait. It's just fireworks written all over it. And I know you're going to get into more fights. Almost, I wanted to kind of ask you a question before you start nailing out 5, 6, 7 great fights. How big is this ESPN deal? It seems like there's a fight every day, Max, that is getting announced. We have Curtis Blaydes is fighting soon, right? Jorge Masvidal versus Darren Till. I know you're going to get into them. Do you think ESPN is elevating UFC to have all these main events, all these cards, all these great matches, great fights coming up? How pumped? I think the ESPN deal is just going to push UFC next level.
Oh, of course. And for those that watched the sport back in the day, it wasn't even on TV. Then it went to Spike, and then it went to our favorite station, Fox Sports. But any sports fan, we talked about this off air. You ask a grandmother, you ask somebody at the YMCA, you ask your mom, you ask your dad, you ask anybody, any family member, friend, anybody will say ESPN is the first thing that comes to mind when watching sports. So for the UFC, which is the fastest growing sport in the world, very global, and I think that's what makes it so entertaining, to be on ESPN and to have the best fighters, the best athletes represented in the best way possible is a dream come true for Dana White, for the UFC, for the new ownership. And it's going to take not only the athletes to another level, but the sport as a whole. Not only will it get more recognition, so when you have these kids growing up, we always say everybody's entertained with the fight. Like Dana White has gone on record for saying this. You could have a basketball game, a football game, a soccer game, but when a fight breaks out, everybody stops and watches that fight. So you already have that element to attract these people. But now if it's mainstream and it's something it's brought in a good light, it looks very professional, you'll see these parents, hey, yeah, you can go in the gym and train, instead of necessarily just pushing them away from that to go to baseball, to go to football or basketball. Now it'll be a more welcoming opportunity for young men and women or boys and girls to go into the gym. So I think we'll see a new future for the UFC, and of course that comes with young talent who will keep getting better and better and evolving the sport.
I totally agree. And I know we're maybe a little bit off topic or a little bit too big or grand. I know we're not talking about in particular fights, but my next kind of question for you, Max, anyone that's listened to the Locked In Sports podcast has known we think outside the box. We've thrown out ideas to make the sport better on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And there's two things we have been talking about for a while. One is you and I are on the 100% same page. We talked to 50 fighters about it. And another that I feel like I'm on an island by myself. First and foremost, I want ESPN to really try to change the scoreboard for MMA fights, for UFC fights. I can just see, one of the high-ranking officials for ESPN be like, wait a second. So you're telling me after the second round, after halftime of the football game, you don't know what the score is of this fight? I can just see one smart guy, or two of us, me and you have been saying this for a year now, saying, wait, something's not right here. We need to know the score. That's for one. I want you to hit on that. And secondly, a season. I know Bellator is really getting into the tournaments, Grand Prix, and I don't want just tournaments because I feel like that leaves out, in the NBA season or the NFL season, it's just not playoffs. There's a season, then playoffs. I really feel like the ESPN high brass might really try to get together and be like, all right, what can we do to create a season? And I threw out something, and you can look backlog of the Locked In episodes and figure that out. But those are my two big things I wanted to hear your thoughts on.
They'll make it, let's get into the season real quick. They'll make it, I think ESPN will try to make it more understandable for the first-time viewers, for the general audience. Of course, you have the diehard MMA fans who know what they're watching, but for the first time, you're going to have a lot of people watching the UFC and maybe not understanding it. So for the season aspect, I think right now it has too many loopholes. And of course, every idea, even ones that are already implemented into the sport, have loopholes. But the season, I think, is a little too far ahead. I'm not saying it won't ever take place in the future. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. But for the scoreboard theory, of course, you know I'm on the money with that as well with you. There has to be a scoreboard. I couldn't imagine watching any other sport and not knowing the score after the quarter and have to guess until the end of the game. So I really hope ESPN listens to the Locked In podcast. We'll tell Dana White himself when he comes to Island Fights. We'll do whatever it takes to make this sport a better sport for the viewers. And I really think that's something that people really grasp the concept of. Like I said, the first-time viewers seeing this, it'll be easier for them to follow it and learn the sport as they grow with it at ESPN. So right on the money, cuz.
All right, sounds good, my man. All right, let's break down some more fights.
I did want to touch on the Wonderboy Pettis yet.
Yeah, jump on that.
This is interesting for Pettis, obviously fighting out a Rufus sport, because this is like his rejuvenation of his career, because obviously he has a decorated resume at the lightweight division, but it's like, of course, you have the Connors and the Habibs and Ferguson, who he just had a war with. So it looks like in the lightweight division, it would be an uphill battle for him. Not saying that he couldn't overcome that and achieve that, but him at welterweight, I think, is a really good test for him. And this will either blossom into a bright future, or it'll be clear for him to stay at lightweight. But either way, I think this was a good move for Anthony Pettis to try something new. And maybe he'll have more power. He'll be more explosive, if that's even possible. He's a very explosive fighter. But I think this was an interesting move by Anthony Pettis. And for Wonderboy, this is probably exactly what he wanted. Ever since the Tyron Woodley fight, very close fight, people have kind of seemed to figure out his karate style. Not necessarily beat him frequently, but understand, okay, this guy's a great counter puncher. He's very unique, very unorthodox. I can't just bum rush him, so I'm going to take my time with him. And it's almost been like a puzzle, not necessarily figured out, but a little maintained a bit. So to have a striker like Anthony Pettis, who you know wants to go to war with you, I'm sure Wonderboy is just rubbing his hands together, can't wait to get in this octagon, and like you said, fight of the night written all over it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I talked to Pete White about it tonight. The 155 and 145 weight classes are murderer's row, an all-time high. Max, remember like 5-6 years ago, the light heavyweight was murderer's row. When Bones was about to take over, Shogun was still kicking ass. Machida just took over the title. Sugar Rashad Evans, Rampage was in it. It was stacked. There was name after name after name. Glover Teixeira was undefeated, knocking out people. Gus. Now, the last 5 years, and I know you're on board with this, that lightweight division is just insane. One of the greatest ever. Conor McGregor is, you can argue, the fourth best fighter in that, with Habib. Tony Ferguson, you think maybe one of the most underrated fighters in the game? And he's thinking they want Max Holloway to move up. So, Showtime Pettis, welterweight to me is a weaker division. And he can put on with a weight. Don't slim down. Don't lose your power. And just fight, let's just be honest, lesser competition. Woodley's a stud champion. Darren Till's a stud contender. So I know I'm not saying the whole weight class is weak, but let's just be honest, the 8th best welterweight to the 8th best lightweight, it's a different category. You agree with that one?
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how his power and his conditioning transfers to the next weight class. But I do want to stick in the lightweight division very quickly. We have Justin Gaethje and Edson Barboza targeted for late March. That's still on the fence, but Could you imagine these two in the lightweight division going toe-to-toe? Edson Barboza, the elite striker in the division. Justin Gaethje, every time he fights, it's a war. He has a chin. He wants to move forward. So talk about another fight of the night potential. UFC and ESPN seems to be putting together fights like they always have, but even a little bit more to make sure you're getting the most entertaining fights possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's what they're doing. ESPN is not dumb. They're ESPN for a reason. They're really making sure this first half of 2019 with the UFC jumping on board with their, it's a partnership. They're a team now. UFC and ESPN are a team. They want to help each other. So, they want to put on that Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner kind of a fight. They need a moment that the UFC goes mainstream. Did you see the Barboza Gaethje fight? The greatest fight we've ever seen. Them just having a war. I really think they're trying to capture that moment. That's why I think they made the Pettis Wonderboy. I think that's why they made Gaethje Barboza, and that's why they made Till Masvidal. These are 3 fights that can become the fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you've mentioned Darren Till versus Jorge Masvidal a couple times. The main event, London, March 16th. I love that fight, Max. I love it. I'm sorry I talked about it so much and you broke it. I love that fight. I'm about to say, I know you're a Till guy. For those that don't know, Jorge Masvidal was supposed to compete against Nick Diaz. Obviously, some issues have arose. So Jorge Masvidal is not facing Nick Diaz anymore as targeted. He's now supposed to be fighting Darren Till as the main event, London, March 16th. Darren Till suffering a loss from Tyron Woodley. I believe that's the first loss of his career, especially in the UFC. And then Jorge Masvidal, he's lost to Wonderboy Thompson. But both fighters have so much to prove to get back in title contention. You need an impressive win as well with all these different contenders. You got Covington and Usman and Woodley and Askren, Robbie Lawler. So it's not just a win that gets you back in title contention. It's an elite type of win. What is your thoughts on that fight?
Darren Till, and Darren Till. He's been one of my guys. Every 3 to 5 years, another guy of mine is Style Bender, who's going to fight Anderson the Spider Silva next month. I just think Darren Till is next level. I thought he could beat Woodley, and I still think he can. I thought maybe he was rushed a tad early to that title shot, but, I'm not putting any excuses out there. Woodley beat him fair and square. I think Darren Till is that next level guy. I think he's going to walk through Masvidal, who's just a complete monster. Masvidal can take punishment for days and then throw right back. So, again, it's just I'm so excited for this fight. Sometimes as fight fans, there's not a championship on the line. Masvidal isn't one of the biggest names in the game. I'm super high on Darren Till, but maybe there's some people that are not as high as me. But that fight just excites me so much. Out of all these fights on ESPN, even Henry Cejudo, TJ Dillashaw, a champ. Some people call it a super fight. Greg Hardy's on ESPN. There are so many great fights. But of all these fights on ESPN, Darren Till, Jorge Masvidal is the fight that interests me the most.
That's London. Like I said, the main event. The co-main event is Leon Edwards versus Gunnar Nelson, UFC London. Gunnar Nelson obviously is coming off an impressive submission win. He's an elite type of fighter. I believe he trains with Conor McGregor and all of them. What are your thoughts on the co-main as well?
Oh, I'm really high on Gunnar Nelson. I think he gets the job done. You train with success every day. You train with greatness every day with Conor, the notorious McGregor. I'm all in with Gunnar Nelson. It's a great fight. Cuzzo, I would love to go to London. Let's get locked in, fly over the pond, they call it, and let's interview some of these guys. What do you say?
Of course, guys. Again, fightbananas.com. This is a podcast from the Locked In Sports Podcast with Max and Dave. It's available on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio. Download and subscribe if you like what you're hearing, which you do. But most importantly, fightbananas.com. Plenty of articles, plenty of podcasts, videos, you name it. Also on any social media platform. Fight Bananas, and you know how to spell bananas. Come on now. We also have our guy Curtis Blaydes versus Justin Willis, UFC Nashville. And I do have a weird theory for you, but I also want to just say Jose Aldo wants 3 more fights, And that's pretty interesting. It seems like he's on the back nine of his career. So for him to still want to fight is definitely intriguing and certainly entertaining because he's always a fun fighter to watch with such a historic name and historic success. But I have a theory I want to throw out at you.
Just real quick, one thing about Jose Aldo. I haven't seen him. I don't know who that guy is. Is that the guy that got punched by Conor McGregor in 12 seconds? Is that who you're talking about?
It was 13.
Okay, 13 seconds. I'm playing. I got nothing but love for you, Aldo. All right, throw me your theory, Cuzzo.
Okay, so trash talking in the UFC, it's helped a few. I mean, it's helped a lot. Really catapulted few, hurt few. So every fighter has a different type of reaction to the trash talk, right? Some people, you could say, aren't good at it. Some people are really good at it, and obviously Conor McGregor's the most known for it, and that's what catapulted him. He's the biggest star in UFC history. You have people like Chael Sonnen, but then you have people who aren't good trash talkers, like Covington. You have people where it's really not their thing or their stick, and they're trying to do it to get the money fight. So you have all these different types of fighters and how it affects them. Ben Askren has a fight with Robbie Lawler, right? And he's no secret to trash talk. And you can't really say it hurts him because he's undefeated and now he's in the UFC. He's in the contention. But he's going back and forth with Kevin Gastelum. He's been back and forth with Conor McGregor. He's been back and forth with multiple fighters, multiple fighters. From your perspective, your opinion, Dave, are you a fan of it as far as in Askren's shoes? Do you like him doing this knowing that he has a big fight ahead of him and he's still talking to so many other people, or do you love it?
Love it. I'm that guy. I'm a Charles Barkley fan, Conor McGregor, Chael Sonnen fan. That's just who I am. I'm a WWE fan. I'm Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I like the big personality. I like the trash talk. I love the in your face. For one, to me, it elevates you. It does. If Ben Askren asks for these fights, he gets it. Like Conor McGregor told people he wants the main event. He wants the title fight, and he's going to knock you out in the first, and he did it. There's something about it. Damian Maia, who's a great mixed martial artist, can win 6-7 fights in a row, but if he never says a peep, he just he's the fourth fight of the night. So it definitely elevates you. That's for one. And two, it's entertainment. We talked about it with Island Fights and with Dean Tool with matchmaking ability. People want to be entertained. There's 9 to 12 fights a night on a UFC. They see so many fights. There's almost now a fight every week, every other week. But what gets you the money fights, the big fights. Ben Askren right now, he's money. Him and Robbie Lawler, Cuzzo, I won't miss it. I will watch that fight. And if he wins that fight, he gets any guy he wants. He gets Conor. He gets, a title fight. He gets a Diaz. So if you call your shot, have fun, be entertaining, talk the talk, but then if you can walk it behind it, you're just money. You just print green $50 bills on the daily. I love the trash talk game.
50? You mean hundreds? I know we already gave our prediction for the TJ fight on the Locked In podcast, but for those that didn't hear it, we both have TJ Dillashaw beating Henry Cejudo, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it's no disrespect to Henry, an Olympian, defeated Demetrius Johnson. If he wins this, he's obviously shoots up the ranks on the pound for pound, but if TJ wins, I think it really cements him as one of the best in the UFC for sure. Pound for pound, great. Do you have any other MMA ideas, fights, opinions, takes, locked-ins, you name it?
Oh, I do have a locked in. Are you ready for my MMA Fight Bananas locked in?
Okay.
Okay, we talked countless fights about UFC and ESPN, but I'm not going to sleep on Bellator. They have the heavyweight Grand Prix. Cuzzo, my favorite words are trilogy and tournament. I love what the Bellator did about the heavyweights. To me, it just got me so intrigued. And Saturday, January 26th, 2 weeks away, is the main event, is the final heavyweight, the first ever Bellator heavyweight champion. Fedor versus Ryan Darth Bader. It's almost youth versus old school versus new school, wrestler versus, the one-punch knockout of Fedor. I went back and forth. I actually watched all of their fights going up to this. My locked in is that Fedor puts the cherry on the top of his career. The Sunday is split. Fedor wins the Bellator championship. The Grand Prix goes to Fedor. He locks in this win and locks in one of the greatest heavyweight fighters of all time.
It's a very good locked in. A lot of people think he's the greatest heavyweight ever. Some consider him the greatest fighter of all time. I'm a Kane guy, but definitely give Fedor his respect, and I could definitely see that outcome happening. Ryan Bader's a UFC veteran. Ben Askren's the guy that I'm really happy is in the UFC. My other wish would be Fedor. So I would love to see him get success and win that belt like you're locked in. That's a great locked in, Cuzzo. This podcast, you already know it, but for the people that don't, please let them know where they can hear it.
iHeartRadio, guys. It's the app on all your iPhones, your Androids, your Galaxy, any of those. iHeartRadio. There's another one, Spotify. I know you're listening to music. I know you're listening to Post Malone. As soon as you're done listening, then go to the Locked In podcast that has 2 N's. Locked In, INN. And last, my favorite, Apple Podcasts. You can listen to it on your Mac computer. You can sometimes go to YouTube, go to Fight Bananas. We're everywhere. Instagram. You can go check us out on Facebook at Locked In, fightbananas.com. Every day you will see our beautiful face. You will see us talking about MMA. You know, we're always locked in, Cuzzo.
Yes, we are. And I started off the episode with this, and I'll end it with this. Failing Upward, Death by Ego, John Fitch's book. Just started reading it tonight, and it's already a great read about his career and his upbringing in wrestling. It's a book 1, so make sure you guys check it out and support John Fitch. Talk about Bellator. He has an opportunity to win the title, so check it out, John Fitch, Failing Upward, Death by Ego. So there we have it, Dave. Another great episode in the book.
Cuzzo, that's all we do is great episodes. That doesn't surprise me one iota.
And like always,
stay locked in.